So today we are going to be talking about controller and its use on the Xbox console and on PC. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the Xbox Adaptive Controller. We'll also be talking about the role of keyboard and mouse and our partnerships with some hardware providers in terms of how those can be used on our platform as well. And we'll be David will be talking about wearable input as well. So, it's a great, big, beautiful world. There are 7.6, actually more than that, people in the world. And of those, there are over 1 billion people with some form of a disability. There's over 4 billion people online and connected, and there are projected to be, within the next 3 years, over 2 billion gamers. That's a lot of people that want to play games. So if you do the math, that's well over 200 million people that might have a limitation that would prevent them from being able to game the way they want to.
So when we look at disability and how we approach designing for disability, we really take a lot of inspiration from how the World Health Organization has defined disability. And this is what they call the social model of disability. It's not the only model of disability, but for us as product makers, it actually makes a lot of sense. This idea that disability is not a personal health condition, it's a mismatch in interactions between a person and their environment. So let me give you a kind of a canonical example of that. You know, we all came into the building. Many of us probably came up the escalators, but my friend Cherry and August here, they probably didn't come up the escalators, they came up the elevator. So if that elevator wasn't there, the problem isn't the condition that they have or the fact that they use wheelchairs. The problem is that this building wasn't accessible. It is a mismatch in interactions between people and their environment. And for us, on the journey to create the Xbox Adaptive Controller, we had to recognize that we created our own exclusions. You know, we needed to kind of see what we did. Our controller makes a lot of assumptions about how it's going to be used. We love our traditional controllers. I'm going to just say they're the greatest. I don't know, I can say that. They're the best controllers you can get, especially this one. This is a X-Fest one from last year. It's really nice for those who are at X-Fest. But controllers assume a lot of things. They assume that you've got 2 hands to hold these sticks, and that they assume that you've got a fine motor control to be able to hit all the buttons that are on this device. Does anyone know how many buttons are on a controller? Guess? I'd like to hear, shout out some guesses. 26. Karen? 17 or 18, she cheats because she's seen this before. 17 or 18, depending on how you count them. There are 17 buttons on the Xbox controller. 18 if you count the sync button. So that's a lot of buttons that you get at with 2 thumbs and 2 index fingers. That's more density than a keyboard, but that movement makes a ton of assumptions about how it's going to be used. You know, we assume that people have the reach to get to their bumpers and triggers, right? We assume that people have the endurance to hold this device for a long gaming session. And I will tell you that, you know, when we started to have these conversations with our hardware developers, and we would say, this is too heavy, they'd be like, they just couldn't understand. Because they're like, well, I play for 17 hours with this thing, on Saturday. You know, it's not too heavy. But it's very easy to say, get over your biases. It's very tricky to actually put yourself in someone else's shoes. I actually really hate that expression. And so we came up with the Xbox Adaptive Controller. You've probably seen this picture. You can come see it in the expo hall. We'll show it to you. I like to call it ZAC for short. I call it ZAC a lot. And this is some of the peripherals that plug into it. So I mentioned before that it was really tricky to get over your biases. And so one of the things that we really firmly believe in is this saying that exists in the disability community, and it has for a really long time, called nothing about us without us. Which means that we didn't design the Xbox Adaptive Controller for people with disabilities. We designed the Xbox Adaptive Controller with people with disabilities. We engaged with all these organizations from pretty much the beginning. We worked with Able Gamers, the Cerebral Palsy Foundation, Special Effect, Craig Hospital, and Warfighter Engaged, and all of them had a really unique approach which led to the development of the device. They were invaluable partners for us. And partners isn't a strong enough word. They were part of the team. So here are some folks, some of them you might recognize. I really like Jordan. She's my favorite. And the one I want to talk about, though, is in the upper corner. It's Sergeant Josh Price. He's who we met in 2015 at our one-week hackathon. And he basically showed us that how he couldn't use this device, right? And I think what was really vital for us, starting with a veteran, to be completely transparent about our sort of journey, is that we had a lot of veterans on our hardware leadership team, and they could work with Josh, and they could see Josh, and they could see that if he didn't have gaming in his life, what he'd be missing. And that was super powerful for them. They recognized it instantly. So that's why it's really vital to work with people with disabilities. And so when we work with people with disabilities, we have a huge spectrum we kind of go through. This here is Jesse. We met him at Harborview. They're a hospital up in Seattle. We do game nights there, and so Jesse came by a facility we have on the campus called the Inclusive Tech Lab. And this is one of our occupational therapists. I have one occupational therapist I work with. This is her. It's Caitlin. So she's working with Jesse on a device called the Quad Stick, which is plugged into the Xbox Adaptive Controller. It's a mouth-articulated controller. And in this case, he was using it to play Rocket League. So he could play Rocket League with just basically this straw in the controller. And that was a combination of the Xbox Adaptive Controller allowing him to use this device, but also it was the fact that Rocket League allows you to remap acceleration to stick movement, which is something that us as platform makers can't do. So it's really kind of vital for game developers to really contextually think about their games and how that works and put those specific remapping things into it. This is a different person. She's actually right here. She hates it when I pull her in there too. This is Cherry. So while we look at a lot of extreme cases, and we started a place from extreme cases, this is one of my favorite examples, and this is one of the things that we learned kind of going on, is that not everyone's in a very severe place. Who likes doing stick presses in video games, Like who enjoys it?
No hands.
Right? No hands, right? Stick presses are hard, right? So what I mean by that is for some people, like I said before, you might not actually even have the ability to use the joystick and press it as a button at the same time. So one of the things we talked with Cherry about is that we could remap the Xbox Adaptive Controller so that these two big buttons are stick presses, and using a feature we have called Copilot, you can use these two devices together on the Xbox or Windows 10, and basically she can set these two stick presses so she can change the movement. And not only is that good for someone who doesn't have the strength, we talk to people with RSI or arthritis who talk about like, man, I can play Destiny for like 4 hours, but then my fingers are burning, right? So change the movement. Change the movement to a different thing. So now maybe you can do this, right? That's really valuable for us. This is where we are at on our journey. These are the types of things we are kind of investigating.
So now's the Vanna White portion of the talk.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, it's me.
So I'm going to audio describe this slide for those that might not be able to see the detail that you see on it. But the Xbox Adaptive Controller has a series of input ports on the back that allow someone to actually put in 3.5 millimeter switches to externalize any input they want. So we didn't reinvent the wheel here. It was very important to us that we didn't go out and create an ecosystem when a rich, deep ecosystem of switches already exists. There are literally thousands of different inputs out there that you can plug into this, and it just works as long as they conform to the 3.5 mil standard. You can go to 7-Eleven, buy a pair of headphones, cut off the earbuds, put two wires together, and boom, you've got a switch. It's just that simple. You can see that there are 19 along the back right here, and then there is a data port. This is the same thing that you would plug your controller in, except in this particular case, we've made it a USB-C because we know personally, as well as I'm sure everybody in this room, directionality of plugging a power thing in is a pain in the butt. So USB-C, non-directional. The bind button is on the back as well, so it connects just like a traditional controller. It is a traditional controller, just in a different form factor. On the front of the device, the front is 2 large buttons. Those are by default mapped to A and B. And then there's a directional pad in the lower left-hand corner, as well as the guide button on the top that allows you to engage the system. And then the menu and view, which are used traditionally by a lot of games to bring up controls. And then on the sides are 2 USB ports. One on the left-hand side is mapped to the left trigger, and the one on the right-hand side, or left thumbstick, and the one on the right-hand side is mapped to the right thumbstick. And what's really interesting about those ports is they're standard USB 2.0 HID, but they also not only take the joystick movement or the thumbstick movement, but they also take the first 8 buttons that that device might report. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen those big Logitech flight sticks. 32 different buttons on that thing. We take the first 8 that that device reports, and somebody could largely play a good percentage of the games with just the flight stick and hitting the buttons. Now, I skipped one button. I'm sure some of you noticed when I was talking about this device. There's this thing on the front of it called the profile button. And so what this does is it allows you to take all those buttons and switches that you've laid out in a way that works best for you and actually save that configuration. And you can have multiple configurations. There's a software both on the Xbox console as well as on the PC, and you can actually go in and map the different outputs, sticks, buttons, to whatever you want them to be, and then you save that profile, and it's tied to your account. And you have up to 256, is that what it is? 256 individual profiles that you can have and 3 that you can store on the device. So what that really means is you can have a configuration for, say, Forza, where the 2 big buttons on the front are look straight and look straight forward and back, handbrake. Buttons on the side are rewind and pause and switch camera. And a one-handed controller by a company called PDP. It looks a lot like a nunchuck that you've seen before. You need gas and brake and thumbstick with that. And you don't have to change that layout. All you have to do is press the profile button, and now you've got a Fortnite configuration. Jump, big button. Fire and melee, big button. You've got aim down slightly in build mode on the controller. So the power of the device is its simplicity, that you can literally plug things in and out of it, move things from one port to another, but the extensibility is being able to save those configurations and use them any way you want. And frankly, make multiple configurations for the same game. You might have campaign mode and another way of playing in a game. That just makes it easy for you to save it. And it's portable, comes along with you, plug it into your friend's console, and you're good to go.
Yeah, absolutely. We always talk about like Warthog mode versus Master Chief mode. This is my friend Erin Hawley. She was one of the subject matter experts that helped us design the Xbox Adaptive Controller. And even though she loves this device, she really depends on mouse and keyboard. And here are some words that she has about how important mouse and keyboard are for her. So we're excited to be able to bring mouse and keyboard to Xbox One. I'm just going to leave that up for a second for people.
Yeah, so you want to read some of those for those that might not be able to read the...
So yeah, you're right. As much as I like the Xbox Adaptive Controller and what it stands for and how it opens up gaming to a bunch of people that were otherwise shut out of console gaming, I would still love mouse and keyboard support on all games for the Xbox One and other consoles. The keyboard has way more possible inputs than a standard controller, but this only means something if the games are fully remappable controls, which is something we always recommend. And games should always have that. I have a lot of trouble aiming and shooting with the same with controllers. With the mouse, it's better for her. I'm not actually going to finish reading the whole thing. Yep. But Erin has a muscular dystrophy. She has very decreased strength. So pushing a joystick for her is sometimes hard. She might have a lot better precision with a really light mouse that you can crank up the DPI on. That's basically what we're talking about. So one of the things that I think Evelyn and I believe in when we talk about game input is, we don't believe in one size fits all. Yep. We believe in giving people options.
Absolutely. And with that said, keyboard and mouse is on Xbox One. There are games that support mouse input and keyboard input, and it gives gamers variety of choice. Erin is one example, but another example is a gentleman we work with by the name of Kevin Ostrom. Kevin had a stroke a few years back, and he lost the ability for any motion on the right side of his body. And it was devastating for him because he was a console gamer. And he loved just sitting in his living room with his family and just cranking away on games. And so he learned to adapt and started using a keyboard and mouse. He has is that a Razer? Is that a left-handed Razer mouse?
It's a left-handed Razer Naga, which is quite rare nowadays.
It's a very, very configurable mouse. And if for some of you that might not be able to see it, his foot is actually rocking back and forth on a device that allows him to actually do, is that mouse input or keyboard?
It's actually WASD in this game.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's called the stinky board, that device.
For obvious reasons,
Yeah,
it's your foot.
Because it's for your foot.
Yeah, and so at the end of the day, like Bryce said, choice is what's key. And this ability for him to play on PC, he now can bring that gaming experience to console, which he greatly misses.
And we're excited to work with companies like Razer on things like the Razer Turret, which is the first official keyboard and mouse combination for Xbox One. It's a great device. It's designed and built for 10-foot gaming. Play on the couch, optimized for that. It's got a battery life of 40 hours. It's fully wireless. It works both really well with the Xbox One and also with your PC. It has. Sorry, I love going through all these feature lists, but I really do love this device. The fact that we can bring something that we know gamers love on PC to the console is something really special for us. Just the support that I appreciate in here, things like the comfort, the way that they've thought about the ergonomics and how you would sit on a couch and be able to have the comfort support that your wrists can rest on are really important.
And it's a right sexy looking device too. Look at those
Yeah.
colors. It is really a great looking device. So, 2 types of input, but we are exploring all kinds of input that makes gaming possible for more people. And we now like to bring up to the stage David, who actually works for a company called Tap. And he will show you how gesture can be used across Xbox One and Windows platforms and others.
Hello? Okay, I guess it's on. All right, I'm going to introduce Tap to you. Let me just use this now. Okay, and I'm going to show you something which is a kind of a revolutionary new paradigm in how we accomplish input. It's a keyboard and it's also a controller. And I'm going to just switch over to a live demo here, which never goes wrong. Okay, so this is a virtual corded keyboard. And whenever I tap my fingers on any surface, it's going to print a character which is associated with that tap. So I'll go. Try this again.
Is getting this set up. I'll say that the Xbox Adaptive Controller, a traditional controller, a mouse and keyboard, tap, all of these alternate forms of input on our system, they just work. Like there's no special developer work that needs to be done to make these function on our system. But there are things that game developers can do to create great modifiable game mechanics that help gamers with all kinds of abilities be able to play the game better. So you don't have to design specifically for our input, but we recommend that you design your game with gamers with disabilities in mind. Choice is key. Give gamers options for being able to interact with the system using these great types of inputs. Are you good?
Thank you. No, not yet. But if this doesn't work, then I'm just going to go on and we'll just lose the live demo. So, yeah. So give it one more shot. Yeah, this is just your classic Bluetooth pairing issue.
When I first saw this, I mean, we've been working with these folks for a long time, and I was actually in Jerusalem when I got to see like some of the more recent work, and it was working with the team that they have there. It's just amazing.
Okay, there we go. Let me just make this large so you can see it. All right, and hopefully now this will work. Okay, so. Okay. Okay.
So for those who can't see, he's just tapping on the table, and
Yep.
those are the letters that are
And
coming
he's
in.
saying, this is a tap, keyboard and mouse.
Right. Okay, I'll go back to the safety of this presentation here. All right, thanks for bearing with me. So this is as I said, it's a virtual keyboard. What I'm going to do is just tell you a little bit about the highlights of this device, and then explain how it's applicable to gaming and, of course, to accessibility. So by default, it is a fully featured keyboard, and it can enter any of the characters that you can do with a standard keyboard. It does this through a standard Bluetooth HID connection, and it also can be connected through a proprietary Bluetooth channel called a GAT channel, which is used very frequently by developers to accomplish things beyond what a keyboard could do. It's a born-inclusive device, so it has haptic feedback, and that's also a very helpful feature. Now, in order to use it as a keyboard, you've got to learn the set of taps which correlate to the alphabet. So how do you do this? And it turns out that it's a very fast and simple process. It's a two-stage process. The first step is actually learning the letters. That's a cognitive memory process. And for that, we have a very fun app called Tap Genius. And it's just a gamified learning system. It takes about 1 to 2 hours. And it just introduces letters in a logical way. It has very fun sort of Sesame Street type jingles, which are unforgettable. And in a very short time, you'll know the alphabet. That will get you up to about 12 words per minute of tapping. The rest of it is the development of muscle memory, which is the same thing you do with any skill like this, whether it's a keyboard or a game. And to develop muscle memory, we send you 10-minute drills. You do 1 drill a day, and it typically takes between 2 and 3 weeks, which is between basically 2 to 3 hours, 4 hours to get fully up to speed. By 5 hours, everybody who's done this is approaching the 40 word per minute level. It's so fast because there is no spatial information, and that's important, as I'll point out later on when we get to gaming. Now, Tap is much more than just a keyboard. So there are 2 different paradigms for how to customize it. The first one is traditionally what developers would do, and for this, we support you with a full set of SDKs, which cover Windows and the mobile platforms. And at this point, we have over 1,000 downloads from developers who have developed and are developing some very creative applications for Tap in gaming as well as in a lot of other areas. For non-coders, we have an interactive tool called Tap Mapper, and it's just a point-and-click tool which allows you, in the same way that you would rebind your keyboard for a game, it allows you to create shortcuts and macros and key assignments which are useful not just for games, but for many, many other things. And our users have posted hundreds and hundreds of tap maps, which enable people to play games, to cruise through applications, and to do a lot of other really fun things. Who's buying it? So there are 3 main segments that are really adopting this. The first one is just the consumer segment, people who are using it for all sorts of reasons why they would prefer to use this in a particular situation rather than a traditional keyboard. It's much more relaxing, it's much more mobile, and it's a very powerful solution. So that's one segment. It's, just by the looks of it, it's a very, very natural device to be used with augmented and virtual reality. And this is an area where people are adopting it both in the consumer segment and in the enterprise segment for all sorts of different applications because it's eyes-free. Once you're wearing this, you know what your fingers are doing. You don't need to see anything in order to tap, nor do you need to be able to have a physical keyboard with you. So it's very handy in those situations. And then lastly, and of course not least, is accessibility. So among our users, a high number of them are from the blind and visually disabled community. This is an area that we've been working on with from the beginning. In addition to this, people who are only able to operate a keyboard with one hand, it's very, very helpful for them. And we are now discovering more and more uses where people have issues with mobility, with cranial stability, and lots of other users to whom this is a very, very helpful tool to do input with, either for gaming or for text entry. Okay, so to go to gaming, just fundamentally, Tap for everybody is a exciting game control option for various reasons. First of all, this is a device that can be used ubiquitously with any platform. So you can create an experience for a mobile device, and the same gameplay can be done on a PC or on a console or basically on any platform. Also, for mobile gaming, this breaks you free of the surface of the device. So gamers can now play very sophisticated games on a mobile platform. You can even have multiplayer games, something which I'll show you a little bit later, just on a mobile phone. Now that Microsoft has opened up the Xbox to PC, to keyboard and mouse input, this also is a great accessory for the Xbox, as well as for VR games, and you can actually use it for text entry. So whether it's communicating within a game or using it to navigate, you'll see it's a very powerful solution. And as I've said, for people who have no mobility issues and a lot of other specialty conditions, this is a very helpful device. So now I'm going to just show you a couple of very quick clips that just demonstrate what I'm talking about in terms of gaming. So here, what we're doing is just navigating through the Xbox menu just by using tap clicks. Now we've come to a search box, and instead of having to do this manually, what we can just do is tap. This is going to be Pro Evolution, and he's already got the search result. Okay. This is a little clip of playing Fortnite, and here, if you notice, these two taps are paired to the Xbox, and we do this via a little HID converter that we've created. And he's both manipulating the mouse and the keyboard with each hand. And if you notice, there's very, very little lateral movement needed and very little hand travel. So this is a great solution for many players. Here, we are paired to the XAC, the ZAC, and what we've done is now also used our adapter to connect as a controller. So the right hand is operating as a joystick and also for some button presses. And we're also using the XAC to also trigger certain things. And that's how this gaming experience is created. And then finally, this is a game that we're demoing. It's just a free game that we've made for our users. And it's a multiplayer game that, again, can be played on any platform. Here it's being played on a PC. And the two players are each wearing taps, and they're just paired to the PC. And even though they don't have to interact with anything else, they're able to play this competitive game. So that's all I really have to say, except that the real goal here is to open this up to the creativity of the developers and to see what kind of exciting things they can come up with this capability.
Yeah, I'm so excited by the potential of this device and what it actually enables for our players, especially with the Xbox Adaptive Controller. That's my bias there. That's kind of my thing. I think one of the things that you mentioned earlier, and Evelyn mentioned too, when we talk about HID devices plugging into the Xbox Adaptive Controller, we only accept joystick HID devices in the Xbox Adaptive Controller. We do not accept mice or keyboards. There are obviously very competitive and business reasons for not doing that. We support mouse and keyboard on the system, so we don't basically let people sneak them in through the Xbox Adaptive Controller. So it's really important for us to work with people who are making these really innovative devices that they get supported on the Xbox Adaptive Controller.
Absolutely. So we hope that what we've shared with you today gives you a little bit of insight into a wide variety of different options. Like Bryce has mentioned, I've mentioned, David's mentioned, it is choice. Choice is key, giving gamers the options to play the way they want to play, not the way we tell them they should play. So at the end of the day, when we all play, everybody wins, and we firmly believe in this philosophy.